Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
Thought we'd take this advantage, now that there's a little bit of break with Vikings news, to do our 2029 7th round mock draft. John, you go first.
I just can't wait. I've been looking at this already, and I'm just chomping at the bit. So let's get into it. I'm going to break it down pick by pick.
There are some backup fullbacks playing in the SEC that I really want to talk about. We're going to start with, we're kidding. We actually have a couple of really big picture topics that are very relevant to the Vikings today. We're going to get to here on the Viking Update Show. He's John Krasinski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Suhan from the Star Tribune. Please check out the John Krasinski Show. John does great work and does a great show for us on the Timberwolves, which is a fascinating and very fun team, especially right now. The Viking Update Show is presented to you by Onyx Hunt, and we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studio. We also want to thank True Vision Institute. We'll thank our sponsors here in a little bit. Best way to listen to this show or any of the many shows you might like at TalkNorth.com. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. We do appreciate it. Last thing, we also have Jeff Diamond, former Viking general manager, doing a show for us on the Vikings, and John's colleague, Alec Lewis from The Athletic, doing a great show as well. So we've got everything covered at TalkNorth.com. We have the best lineup in town. We're going to get to the receivers, because the third receiver position, what they might do with it is really interesting. Let's start with Rob Brzezinski. And we've been talking about him for a long time now, but let's really dig down on whether you think he does have a chance to get the job, whether he should have a chance to get the job, because I think my mind has been shifting in a way I didn't expect it to at this point, but I'll leave it to you to start.
I'll start with, I think the longer that this continues to drag out, the probably better chance it is that it's Rob Brzezinski, because we're quickly getting to a portion of the calendar where if you hire an outside person to come in and try to institute his or her philosophies, way that you evaluate players, the way that they work with coaches and all that, it's getting to a point where it's too late almost to do it. And so it doesn't rule anything out just yet, but Alec Lewis kind of had something this morning on The Athletic just saying that they're still in the early stages of this process. And so it's just okay, what is going to happen here? And so almost by default, you look at it and say, it would make the most sense to keep the guy who's already in-house, on top of what I do believe. I believe Rob Brzezinski is a smart candidate. I believe that he is a good, has a great temperament for that position in terms of trying to unite the business side, the coaches, the scouting, and doing all of those things, and the relationships that he has. So I would have no real issue with him being the hire, but it's also are you really giving this a real chance and opportunity for a search by kind of dragging the feet the way that it has been over the last several months, but certainly since the draft ended?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It would be really strange to assign Rob Brzezinski to oversee the draft, to have the draft. I'm assuming they're happy with the draft internally. Everybody's happy with their draft internally, at least for a little while. And they leaned heavily on their coaches and their longtime scouts and personnel people. It'd be really weird to think that that was a good way to operate, and yet you can't trust Rob Brzezinski with the easiest part of the year, which is the summer, and letting the coaches do their work during the season. It's kind of bizarre. And I think we've all known Rob long enough to be comfortable that he's very intelligent. He knows the organization inside and out. He works really well with other people. He's highly thought of by everyone I know in that organization, always has been. And I think that speaks to something that makes me think they should give him the job. And I'm not sure I felt that way at first because it just felt weird. Okay, you're moving your salary cap guy over to run the draft. That seems really odd. Why would you do that? Why would you do that if you're not going to give him the job? Now that we're at this point, I think Rob's lack of ego would really make him a good fit for this organization. Okay, Kevin O'Connell has a lot of offensive expertise. Brian Flores has a lot of defensive expertise. They do have very good scouts working for them. Kwesi kind of, went a little nuts with his first draft and didn't really make up for it in succeeding drafts. I'm not going to blame this team's scouting department for those decisions. And the fact that Rob is not a guy who wants to be a hero figure or a star or wants credit for anything, that really might enable this group of people to work really well together. And I think when Kwesi first got here, they had that vibe for a little bit. But then when you start kind of, again, making weird choices in the draft and damaging everybody's ability to win, the relationships are just not going to stay that way. I think Rob has the ability to actually have those relationships in this building.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Jim. And I do think that you want right now what this organization feels like it needs is a uniter, is a culture guy that can sort of bring the factions back into alignment. When you talk to people about how it went over these last couple of years in Kwesi's tenure, there was definitely a lot of kind of finger pointing, a lot of deflection, a lot of, well, this guy does this or this guy does that. And like, I don't think this was entirely Kwesi's fault. Like, I think that certainly the leadership aspect of the job was not his strong suit. But I also do think that one of the elements to consider in making this hire is that your head coach and your defensive coordinator are both very strong personalities, and they are really, really good at what they do. But I think that it feels like this is all shaping up to be something of a structure that's different than my GM is here at the top, my head coach is underneath, and we have the main decision maker, and then that's how we're going to go about and do things. And that GM is reporting to ownership, and that's the way it's going to go. It seems like things are setting up here to be more of a sort of collaboration of, okay, the coaching staff's going to have a lot more say on personnel than maybe some coaching staffs do around the league. You're going to have your general manager, you're going to have your ownership, you're going to have your scouting staff. But if that's going to be the model that you're going with, you need someone who is a great relationships person, who has the trust of people in there, who can communicate with all different departments and people in that organization. And that is such a big strength of Rob Brzezinski. And so that all makes sense. Now, how would you build around him with personnel people and with other things? That I think is a worthy conversation to have. But it does feel like over the last couple of years, and really even dating back to the end of the Spielman-Zimmer era, there's just a lot of tangle in the organization, and you need someone to just kind of like smooth all of that out. And I think Rob would be really good at doing that.
And that was the next point I was going to make, is that I think there will be people pounding the desk saying, hey, you need a personnel guy as your GM. You need a former scout. You need somebody who can make that decision with who's been standing on the sideline with a stopwatch in hand. And I think what we have to remember is that the traditional structure that we think of in that way fails a lot too. I mean, when you hire Kwesi with a different kind of background, kind of a Wall Street background, analytics background, and he fails, everybody's like, oh, look what you did. How could you hire a guy like that? Well, hiring the scout, that fails all the time too. And sometimes the difficulty of hiring the scout or the personnel expert is they're not good at sitting in the big chair and taking in information from a bunch of different people and trying to make a final, either build consensus or make a final decision that those people might not like. It's a completely different skill set, and it requires a different kind of temperament. So, hey, hiring Rob Brzezinski might not work, but also hiring the best personnel guy in the market right now might not work either.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a crapshoot. I will say that if they go this way with Rob Brzezinski, it will also be unconventional in another way. In terms of, it seems like the trend in the league right now is to find kind of the young personnel, data, forward thinking, type of person to kind of take over and lead an organization. And Rob is a dyed in the wool Viking. He's been there for decades and decades, and he is not his background is not in talent evaluation as much as it is in the business side of negotiating the salary cap and all of those things. So it would be a little bit different of a role, but I am kind of, as I've gotten older and as I've been around a lot of organizations, NBA, NFL, others, I do think that sometimes there is an underappreciation for the real sort of leadership element of these jobs. So much of these positions, and you can even put head coach in there as well, it is about managing personalities. It's about bringing people together. It's about communicating and establishing a real vision of where you're going to go and then executing on that vision. And it's also about keeping people together when the boat rocks and people are kind of quick to either jump off or throw someone else off or whatever it is. And so, I like the idea of sort of this kind of overseer of football and hey, he has his own expertise for sure, but also just the guy who is going to be able to have his finger on the pulse of everyone. Who's mad at who right now? What is not going well? How can I help, figure that part out and address it? And how can I lead in that way? And I just think that, Rob would be terrific at that part of the job. And if that means that you have to have someone underneath him who is your, scout, college talent evaluator and the guy who's on the road 190 days a year and doing all of those things and beating the bushes and stuff, great, that's fine. But I think that with where this organization is, with the personalities that are involved in it, having a level-headed kind of real engager and communicator in that spot, there's just as good of an argument for that as there is for the 32-year-old, underling of Howie Roseman with the Eagles, who's ready to try to take over an operation,
who might not really have much to do with the success there. It might be all Howie,
Correct.
Let's one more point to make on Rob, and then let's get to Vikings receivers, particularly the third receiver spot. First, want to thank Aquarius Home Services.
When something goes wrong at home, Aquarius Home Services makes the solution easy with one call to one team and no hassle to find a different handyman or company for each type of job. Aquarius has experts in heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical. That means you get the right expert every time and solutions you can trust. Right now, enjoy $98 off any heating, cooling, plumbing, or electrical repair. Aquarius, one call, problem solved. Earning the right to be recommended. Schedule today at aquariushomeservices.com.
We're also presented to you by Onyx Hunt. Stop fishing the same lake because it's the only one you know. Onyx Fish lets you filter lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential, so you can make a smarter call on where to spend your Saturday before you ever hitch up the trailer. It's only $34.99 for the year. Yes, less than a spool of good braid. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store. Go to onyxmaps.com/fish and fish smarter this season. And here's John for Chew Vision Institute.
True Vision Institute in Bloomington. If we are watching on YouTube right now, you see I have no glasses. I have not had glasses for 2 years now. No contacts, none of that. It's been the best decision that I've ever made. So if you go to truevision.com, set up your free consultation, get in there, tell them that John Krasinski and Jim Suhan sent you there to check it out. You will not be sorry. They walk you through every vision correction option for you. They help you pick the right one for you. And then once you do select it, they get you all the way to the other side of it with an unbelievable amount of care, of guidance, and of expertise. And so, go into True Vision, get yourself going on this, and then join me in kicking yourself in the behind for not doing it 10 years earlier. True Vision, truevision.com.
So Jeff Diamond, former Vikings general manager, has been doing a show on this network for a long time. And, he's really good with salary cap stuff. Oh, he's just a smart guy. And sometimes I have to remind myself, and his 98 Vikings that he built probably should have gone to the Super Bowl with better luck, better health, a couple of different, fewer dramatic twists in that game, including Gary Anderson missing a field goal. That team would have gone to the Super Bowl. Maybe they would have won it. He was very good at running an organization. And guess what? He was not a personnel guy at all. He started as a PR intern. He worked his way up through the organization on the business side, but also making himself available to do all kinds of other things. He ends up being Mike Lynn's assistant general manager. And as he always points out, had nothing to do with the Herschel Walker trade. And then ends up running a team that made the playoffs year after year, then had the great year 98. And again, was good enough to win the Super Bowl. And he was not a personnel expert. He was a consensus builder. He was someone who got along with people. He got along great with players. He got along great with agents. He got along well with media. That was his role in that organization, and to make the final decision based on his experts. And he loved his experts. He trusted his experts, people like, Frank Gilliam and Jerry Reichow and all the other, smart heads in that department. So it can be done that way.
It can be done that way, 100%. I think that every organization has to make the decision of what's right for them in that moment. And I do think, obviously, the Vikings really could use some personnel evaluation upgrades as well for, being better in the draft and building that way. But I just think that those people can also be effective in an organization on just a little bit lower level than the head guy. And I think that Rob is the kind of guy who, as you said at the start of this, with no ego, that when he is leading a group, if someone underneath him has a really good idea that they have presented all of the information and facts for and say, this is the way we should go, Rob will say, you're right, let's do that. And he will take advice, he will take suggestion, but he will also be the guy who keeps everyone focused on exactly where they're trying to go and how they try to get there. And so that ability in a very egocentric, kind of palace intrigue type of an environment that an NFL front office can be, I think is really valuable. I think that and it also is probably a little bit easier for him to be effective in that role if he's at the top of the food chain versus if he is one of several executives that, kind of are where he has been for the last several years. Is like, if you're the main guy, if you're the boss, and this is the way that you want it to go, it's going to be easier for him to kind of have that type of culture and that type of effect seep into the rest of the organization and implement that, with him at the top. And so, I just think that if you have a real idea of where the Vikings have been, what's really been plaguing them, if the Wilfs were to get up and say, this is what we need right now, I would say, you know what, you're right about that. It doesn't guarantee that Rob will be successful. It doesn't. But this idea of there's some magic bullet out there where you hire this guy and it's a guaranteed success it's false. Like we've seen plenty of them, succeed and fail at about the same rate for the last 100 years. And so you just got to really trust yourself and what your organization needs.
Yes. Let's get to Vikings third receiver. They could use a third receiver. We don't know if Felton's really ready for that role yet, especially on a team that thinks it can win right now. Jennings visited. No deal was done. The rumor is that he wants an extraordinary amount of money. So the Vikings maybe wait him out and get him a more reasonable rate. Maybe they just can't afford him or don't think he's worth that money. We'll see how that plays out. I will offer a sleeper pick just because I've always loved this guy ever since he was first drafted. And he has problems or he wouldn't be available, but I love Keenan Allen. He's a big slot receiver, doesn't have to play every down, and I don't know how many snaps a game he's good for these days, but incredible hands, incredible route runner, willing to go over the middle, which is one of the reasons he's been banged up a little bit because he will go catch a pass in traffic. I think he has leadership capabilities. I think he is really smart, tough. I think he's a winning player. I can't guarantee guarantee that he has enough left that he can be really dynamic, but I think in the third receiver role, he could be really nice.
Yeah, that's a really interesting suggestion because I think for me, when I think of third receiver, a lot of times I just kind of default to smaller, quicker, young, fast guy who can kind of wiggle and get open. I think of Jameson Williams, the speed guy, things like players who fit that profile. But what your suggestion brings to mind to me is like more of give me like an older former starter who can be a sixth or seventh man in the NBA, who comes off of the bench and maybe he can't play 35 minutes a night anymore, but if you give him 22 minutes, he can still give you really good reps. And so that to me is intriguing in this role here because you have Justin Jefferson, you have Jordan Addison, two guys either in the prime or approaching their prime, young, dynamic players who will probably soak up a wide percent or a large percentage of the targets. But what if it was a Keenan Allen? What if it was, I think of way back like Anquan Bolden at the end of his years, someone that just comes in and is a great presence, like from a vet leadership standpoint, but then also is like, hey, if you need me to give you 12 really great routes in a game rather than 30, I can come in and still do that for you and do it at a high level. And when you have a new quarterback that's coming in, or even if JJ is there, like having that sort of experienced guy who is going to be where he needs to be on every single play, that's intriguing to me. Like I like that idea, whether it's Allen or whether it's someone more of that ilk versus, the fourth round draft pick who is, in line to get a chance now. Like it's at least worth exploring, I think.
Stefon Diggs was just found not guilty of strangling his assistant. He's older. He was pretty good last year for a very good team. Would you have any interest?
I mean, I would, because it is similarly to Keenan Allen. Can he be your number 1 or 2 receiver anymore? Probably not. Could he be your number 3? And like in terms of like what that spot usually demands is route running, and Stefon Diggs is a great route runner. Is kind of just the ability to separate and get open. Diggs can do that. And I think that if he were to come into an offense with other targets that take more attention away from him, and he's one-on-one against the third defensive back versus getting double coverage from the number 1 DB and a safety or something like that, I think he could still be effective. He's had some injury issues as well, but again, if you limit the burden that you're putting on him from a physical standpoint, it would be intriguing to me. That said, he does have a lot of baggage, and you do know when he's in the locker room, you got to deal with some stuff. And are they able to do that? It's an ecosystem that certainly could, I think, handle that. But that would be a case of I would probably look elsewhere, and if you can't find others, okay, let's give this guy a shot on a non-guaranteed deal, and if he's either physically or mentally not in it, then we can just move on from him. But I do think that he still has talent and could be effective in that role.
Periodically, we have Alec Lewis from The Athletic and TalkNorth.com on this show just to mix it up. We'll probably be having him on again soon, so tune in again. If you like the show, tell people. Spread it on social media. We do appreciate it. Talk North has, again, I think the best sports lineup in town. We have incredible people, so check it all out. We do appreciate it. And, of course, check out the John Brzezinski Show on the Timberwolves.